Good evening, folk. Wonderful to have you with us. I'm really excited about tonight. And we're doing the map show with just a little bit of a different twist to it tonight. And we've got Glenn McQuirk talking to us about My Scar, My Story.
The title of this morning's talk is My Scar, My Story. And when I first wrote this down, in fact, I wrote this particular topic down a year ago. It so happened that at the time that I wrote this down, I was thinking about Jordan, because Jordan was wanting to become a speaker. And I was looking at what kind of topics would be great to speak on. And the first one that came to mind was My Scar, My Story, because that's something that I felt he could talk very well on. But then I began to realize that this is not unique to a person. You know, sometimes we think that a particular person has been through a rough time, and therefore they carry a scar from that particular situation, and maybe it's a visible scar, and so they've got a story. But as I began to think about it, I realized that every single one of us has a story to tell that is the result of some kind of scar in our life. And so when I was preparing to deliver today this message, I thought about all the kinds of scars that I have. And in my life, there are visible scars, which I could show you and say, and tell you the story related to that particular scar. But there are also scars that are invisible. Scars that nobody can see. Only I know what those scars are. They're kind of hidden. There's also those circumstances and situations that you might be going through right now, right at this minute, that only you know about. Maybe your wife, perhaps, might know. Maybe your family is aware. But very often, the circumstances and the situations we go through are things that we hold to ourselves and we do not share with others easily. And it sometimes comes out in anger, frustration, and mostly the blaming game. We begin to blame other people. So I'm going to talk to you today about something which I really believe is going to be of value to you.
Well, wonderful, and I'm sure we've all got those stories. Here's Glenn coming to join me. And Glenn, would you like to just carry on a little further on the topic?
Good evening, Peter. It's really great to be revisiting this particular topic. And of course, every time I look at it or listen to it, there's new information, there's more things that confirm the talk itself. And I know that each of the listeners, as they participate in the discussion this evening, are going to have their own scars and stories to share. But I just wanted to share something with you this evening. You know, Peter, when I was going to deliver this particular talk, I remember the day so clearly. Anne was in the UK at the time, where Heather lives, so she was there, and I was here in South Africa on my own with my son Jordan, and we were busy taking all of the materials to the venue, and this required us to load things on trolleys and so on, and we took it into this particular garden center. You know, it was very close to nature. We set everything up, and as I was doing my last trip to deliver this talk, you know, we had about 10 minutes left, and I had to fetch something from the car. I came back and I misstepped at a particular place in this garden, and I twisted my ankle. I was in such agony at that moment. I thought I'm not going to ever be able to walk again. And I was in excruciating pain, and I had to walk in and deliver this talk my scar, my story. And so there I was delivering the talk with a physical scar right at the moment. And I thought I would just share that because for the viewers and for yourselves as you watch this, if you look closely, you will notice that I was pretending to be fine, but I was in so much pain. I can almost feel it today. And so the scene was set for delivering a talk, not just a theoretical one, but one that I had to work through right there and then in front of the audience. So I'm sure you're going to enjoy the evening, Peter, and I look forward to hearing the panel's insights as we work through this.
I'm looking forward to sharing the story of my scar and my entrance in due course.
Well, let's go and take a listen to the first clip, which talks about my adversity can become my advantage.
My adversity can be, and often is, my advantage. When I think about this, I immediately go to the guy that goes to the gym to build those muscles. I don't know if you've seen the guys. The girls don't do that. I mean, they go to the gym to watch the guys. Well, perhaps the guys go there to watch the girls. I don't know which way it is, but nonetheless, you get a certain number of people that go to the gym for ulterior motives. But there are those who go to build the body. I remember Luigi once. Somebody was visiting Italy and they saw Luigi digging a hole. They said, "Hey, Luigi, why do you dig the hole?" And he said, to build the muscle. And he said, "But why do you want to make a domani?" He said, "Why do you want to make a domani?" "Well, to buy the food." So the person says, "But why do you want to buy the food?" So he said, "Oh, to build the muscle." So why do you want to build the muscle? And the answer was to dig the hole. And so we kind of go through life in this little circle, and very often on Monday mornings we get up to do exactly that. There's no purpose to life other than to sustain ourselves. But adversity for the person who goes to the gym is a good thing. In other words, he has to lift weight that is actually causing his muscles to go through some pain. But that adversity that he goes through begins to build muscle, it builds strength, and if he continues to do it, eventually the muscles begin to show. And people could quite easily look at that muscle builder. Let's think of Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone. Maybe you've seen these people in the movies. There's also that guy, The Rock. What is his name? But anyway, he's on many movies. I think G.I. Joe is one of those movies that he plays in. But when we look at those big, muscular people, we often see the muscle without realizing that is a picture of someone who's been through adversity. So adversity strengthens you and I. But is that the way we feel when we go through adversity? Oh no, when we're going through adversity, we would love to tell the world how difficult this time is. And we complain and we do all kinds of stuff to try and gain self-pity. But I want to tell you today that adversity is your secret advantage. The difficulties that you go through are the very things that are going to equip you for an unknown future that is coming your way, so that you are well prepared for whatever situation you're going to face.
Wonderful. Thank you, Glenn. Just on that introduction, and I thought about my scar. I was attending an international conference in Belfast a few years back, and as things turned out, on the opening night, I was staying at the University Res, a little way out of town, and so my plan was to walk in the next morning to the center of town where the conference was being held. But I got lost on the estate, and I came to a wall and a gate, and I decided rather than walk all the way around, I would just hop over the wall. but I discovered that the drop down the other side was a lot further than I thought it was. And in jumping down, I slipped and I wound up smashing my head on the pavement. And there I lay with blood all over the place. And I've got some very graphic pictures. But to cut a long story short, I wound up getting to the conference with my nose in plaster and my face all stitched up. And it suddenly became an advantage. Everybody at the conference wanted to know, who is that guy with his face in a bandage and all stitched up and so on. And I got to know everybody at the conference simply because I became a celebrity because of my scar. And so, yeah, these things can do it. And I'm just looking forward to the panel coming in and to talk about their adversaries and things that they've been through. We've got a wonderful panel tonight. We've got Heather sitting in London, Marvin sitting in Pretoria, and Manisha sitting in East London, way down by the seaside. Can't quite see Marvin at the moment, but when I think of adversaries, and Manisha, I know, has been through a lot. So Manisha, I'm going to ask you just to kick off and tell us about your adverse moments and what they've done for you.
I have such a long list, but I will start with the most powerful one. So when I was 14 years old, I was gang raped, and I actually did not tell a soul. And I kept it to myself for 14 years further. And along that process, like 4 years after it happened, that's when I found Map for Life. And it's actually because of Map for Life that I am who I am, and has given me my vision. And when I've gone off track, that has pulled me back. And it's because of my scar and what has happened to me that has brought me so many opportunities, that has given me my personality, my drive, my determination. Whenever I feel like giving up, I think of that moment. So if anything, I've actually reached a space where I'm so thankful and I'm so grateful. And my mom is like, how can you be grateful? But it honestly, I looked at the incident and I thought, okay, you can't change the past, but you can do something with this moment, and you can change the future. And it's because of this that I lead leaders, because I wanted to ripple out and I want to cause an effect that's going to help generations to come. Like, I have this massive vision. It's always been global. So that's why I love Map for Life, because it really just embodies who I am, what I love. And it's just the simple foundation, discipline, consistency. There was a lot of stuff I wasn't ready for when I was younger, but now I'm learning the self-mastery and managing my time, managing my money, and managing my emotions, and everything is in the Map for Life. So, you know, thank you.
Folks, I told you we were in for an exciting night, and I wasn't quite expecting a story as dramatic as that. So thank you for sharing, and how a moment like that can be a pivotal point. Heather, what about you? Have you got anything that you'd like to share with us?
Yes, I suppose I could share something. Adversity. I always think that God doesn't test us beyond what we can handle. But using an adversity to an advantage. When we lost our son, I kind of like it. I went through a difficult period of trying to understand why, but very shortly afterwards, several people in the community also lost children, and people at the hospital were calling me to talk to them. So I was able to express myself. We were very open about what had happened. And it taught me that you don't have to hide these things. You don't have to keep your grief to yourself. Yeah. If you're open and you share it, you can help others get through difficult times like that. So I'm not so sure I use it to my advantage, but a lot of people benefited from what we went through. And as a family, we grew and we became closer. So those are advantages, yes. And, it just teaches you also that sometimes we feel that we're special, that bad things can't happen to us. They must happen to everybody else. And we can be on the sidelines looking at them. But when it happens to you, you grow and you take on a different mentality and you begin to understand. You have more compassion for others.
Yeah, wonderful. And then from a Map for Life point of view, could you relate that in any way to how Map for Life's helped you?
Yes, definitely. Because when I look at the wheel and the different areas, and I've looked at how far I've grown in those areas because of that incident, especially spiritually. Instead of one thing I learned from Glenn was don't ask why me, but why not me.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. Marvin, I was going to start off and introduce you as our super athlete and comrades and ultra athlete, but I'm going to leave it to you to tell us about your adversity and what it meant to you.
Thank you so much, Uncle Pete. So I wanted to bring up the story about my journey getting to the start line. If anybody knows anything about running and knows anything about the Comrades Marathon, it's quite a journey just getting to the start line. Deciding that you're going to run and then doing the training that's necessary takes quite a lot. And I'm always intrigued to read a lot about everybody's stories leading to the start line. Getting to the race and completing the race is actually the finish. That's the funny thing. It's actually the finishing of your training rather than the big event. My journey in getting to the start line with Comrades had a series of different things. So I was actually, when I decided to run the Comrades, I had just gotten retrenched. We were busy having our first, expecting our first child, and newlyweds. And now I'm thinking, how's this going to happen? Plus, I picked up a series of injuries by doing too many first-time things. I did my first 21 that same year. I did my first 30 kilometers. I did my first marathon. I did my first ultra marathon. I did all of the firsts, and my body was just not ready for it. I went to 5 different physios, of which 4 of them said you shouldn't be running, and that was a good enough message for me to prove them wrong. And that was the start of 3 that I finished consecutively after that. The part that was really interesting is the time that I got retrenched, or we kind of had to take salary cuts and then decided to kind of close down the business in a way. It was our own company that we were running. Was also the same time that I was able to make a reference to all of my networks that I had. And within my networks, I mean, I just think in MAP, we've got the goal sheet that you would complete. And right at the bottom, there's a section that looks at who in your circle that you know, whether it be somebody, whether it be an organization, etc. And it's over there where I was able to find some contacts that helped me secure another job and secure. In fact, I got two jobs in parallel at the same time. On a contract basis, which set me up for the job I'm in currently at the moment. So while it was a difficult situation, it actually massively helped me to see even bigger success today.
Wonderful, thank you. Glenn, I think it's been quite exciting talking about these things, and I think we're ready for the next clip.
My scar, my story. I think about my brokenness could be my boldness. You know, when life treats us in interesting ways sometimes. I remember when I had the opportunity to go and do military service, the first 3 months in this institution was the mission of the institution was to break the very people that had been there. And when I say break, they weren't actually intending to break the people, but they wanted to make them pliable, softer, so that they could remold and reshape them into a fine-tuned military machine. In other words, they wanted people to behave in such a way that they would respond to orders and not question those orders. And sometimes we go through life, and in that circumstance, there were some people, rather should I say everybody that went through that period, went through some form of molding process and reshaping. And they were different after the 3-month period than they were when they started. And you know, that little story that I shared with you is not unique to that kind of institution. It is something that is in every area of life. The brokenness that you have experienced can become your boldness. In other words, when you have been through a circumstance in life, you are actually being equipped to help other people that go through that exact same circumstance, and you can step into their circumstance with boldness and saying, I've been there, I've done that, this is going to pass. And so our brokenness becomes our boldness. It becomes part of who we are. And so I want to encourage you this morning, if you are in a situation where you feel broke, remember, this is going to be your story. Somebody once said to me that your greatest adversity will one day be your greatest strength. And I think the same thing applies to your brokenness, your heartache, whatever that might be right now.
I can remember my days in the military and going through what Glenn was talking about. But Marvin, can we start with you? And would you like to just tell us a bit about brokenness and boldness?
Yes, I think it's all about perspective. That's the way I see it. I mean, I was reminded of a quote that says, I'll quickly bring it up. It says, it's your reaction to adversity, not the adversity itself, that determines how your life story will develop. And I think every one of us have been given one thing, and that is choice. So we can choose to see something as a broken situation being in a negative sense, or you can see it as one to be that step to take you to the next level. If I look at my own situation, I could have easily gone into a state of depression and think, how am I going to actually do this? This is really going to mess up the rest of our lives. I mean, we got a young one coming in, and we just actually started with a bond on a house. So there was enough negatives to really break us down. And as anybody knows with newlyweds, one of the tough things is communication and finance. Those are the two tough things to navigate in the first few years of your marriage. And I think that one situation really helped my wife and I to become a lot more stronger together. And if there's one thing that I can, and I have many stories actually related to this statement I'm going to make, but never underestimate the power of a praying wife, because the power of a praying wife can make miracles happen. I'll tell you one quick story. So I was in my new job, I was attending a conference in Cape Town. I had this beautiful leather bag with my work laptop, and we were at the Cape Town International Conference Center. You can't miss it. It's in the middle of town. And it's a huge conference. I accidentally left my laptop bag at one of the booths. We went home. Now I realized, like 30 minutes later, I don't have my laptop bag. I went back panicking. I mean, a laptop. What's the chances of you finding it? I found my wife. She says, we're going to pray for this thing. And cutting a long story short, within the next 18 hours, the security at CTICC called the company that was exhibiting there, or that sets up the booths. They found the person, and he brought the laptop bag. The only thing that was missing was my Samsung charger, the for your phone, but everything else was in there. Wonderful. So again, it's a perspective, and it's important to have the right people on your team that will help you see the right sort of perspective.
Wonderful. Heather, when I'm listening to Marvin and he was talking about reaction and choice, I've heard you on the subject. Would you like to just expand on that and talk about?
Well, I think when brokenness occurs, at any point in your life. And again, as Marvin says, it's your attitude towards it. Once you get over the shock and over the self-pity, you start becoming creative, because you're forced into a situation where you've got to say to yourself, what is my next step?
Yeah.
I mean, like Marvin, I was retrenched when I thought I had my game right up there. And no warning, somebody walked in and said, right, gave us letters and said, it's over. When that happens, you don't know what to do, because some people just refuse to move. This is my desk. I work here. I'm not going. And so you first resist. Then the shock hits you. Actually, I've got no job. I'm sitting with a check in an envelope here. I've got to go. But once you get over that shock, you'll be surprised if you look at change your attitude at what you can do. The boldness comes in. And that's how I started a company with somebody else, was because we were thinking, we've got bills to pay. We've got no time to sit around and feel sorry for ourselves. We've got to act. There are other people depending on you. So you can, when you're at your lowest, be more creative and come out boldly and climb that hill.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. And Manisha, you were bold earlier tonight, and you really shocked us with your opening statement. And I know that boldness is your middle name. Would you like to just expand on that?
Yeah, I wanted to say that, we are these human beings and we're here for this earthly experience. And part of it is the range of emotions. And if you look at the Hawkins scale of, a frequency, there's all these emotions there. So we won't know light if we don't know darkness. And we won't know boldness if we don't experience the brokenness. And so it's about facing our fears, our challenges, our obstacles. And I've always been hit with so many, and sometimes I think I was cursed, but then I started saying, okay, these things aren't changing. They just shift a shape or form. So I got to find a coping mechanism. I got to find a way. So I conditioned myself that whatever comes my way, I'm going to be unstoppable. And so I really feel like that. And now I'm able to coach people to get to that point, because I can remember, I love that you guys are speaking about running, because I'm so into running. And I also think that running is my connection to spirit, and I just get so many ideas and insights. And I was so determined to run 21 days in a row because I wanted to lose weight. And this was about 2 years ago. And on day 3, I fell into a ditch and I sprained my ankle. And that didn't stop me. I carried on. I limped. I walked. I wasn't running, but I still carried on because I committed to 21 days of doing this. And I'll show you the progress in the 50 days. And that is a challenge that I do now, fit in 50 days. Because if I can do it with a sprained ankle, what are the excuses that people have? And all of this is in the map for life. It's daily habits. It's so simple. It's the foundation.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And maybe we'll touch on that a little further. But Glenn, let's have the next clip.
My scar, my story. I think of the crises that we go through. And my crises can be my catalyst. So often, people go through a difficult time, a catastrophe perhaps, in their life. And as they go through that, everybody looks on and says, wow, what a disaster. I'm glad that didn't happen to me. But almost years later, you come across the same person and they're completely transformed. And you look at them and you say, wow, I wish that had happened to me, because imagine how I could have changed my life. And it's amazing how those seeming catastrophes create a turning point or become a defining moment in our life, which results in a change or transformation that is actually for our good. It begins to build our character. So stop crying in your crisis. Start looking for the catalyst. Start looking for the change that this crisis is bringing about. Because the longer you lie there crying about the crisis, the more you have to endure it. But if you begin to focus on the character trait that that crisis is developing, you can become excited about the future that that crisis holds for you. So my crisis could be my catalyst.
Wonderful. Manisha, would you like to just talk about how crisis has become your catalyst? And I know there have been many crises. I've been through a couple with you, and I just watched you blossom through them all.
I think it's important in a crisis to feel whatever it is that is coming up, the emotion, because every emotion we feel is valid and should be acknowledged. And when we don't deal with emotions, and in a crisis, you know, there's a lot of emotion, then it just gets stored and it causes worse problems at a later stage. But if we're able to tap into them really soon, then that's when we can change it and make it the best thing ever. 2.5 years ago, I was really in love. Someone broke up with me, and I carried this hurt for 2.5 years. And eventually, at the beginning of this year, I just said, no, you know, I'm done with this. Enough sulking. It's time to move on. And I was with a relationship coach, and she just prescribed something really simple, a self-love exercise. And at the core of each of us is these emotions. And I realized that my biggest lesson, you know, in losing that love is I didn't have enough love for myself. And so I'm so grateful that I lost that love, because now I just fill my own cup. And yeah, just in a happy space and just loving myself at the moment. So that crisis was averted.
Wonderful, wonderful. And we love you too. So just remember that. And so,
Thank you.
and Heather, what about you? I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I'm hoping you're going to go down a particular line.
Crisis. Well, I probably not, because when you were talking about crisis, I was thinking of sometimes when you're in a crisis, it's the fear that becomes the catalyst. In 2011, I had major neurosurgery, and I had 3 people, my daughters, who were taking care of me. And there was so much that I couldn't do. But it was the fear of being like that for the rest of my life that made me train myself to do the things that I wanted to do. A simple thing like eating. At the hospital, there was a volunteer who used to come and feed me, and he was a schoolboy. And I used to get so annoyed that I'm being fed like a baby. And so I said to myself, I'm going to teach myself how to eat again, how to feed myself. And, you know, it took a lot of effort. But being a mathematician, I kept on saying, okay, if I think my mouth is here and it's not there, and I'm getting it all over here, so maybe I've got to move so many centimeters to this way, because maybe when I think my mouth is 10 centimeters on the right, I might just hit my mouth. And when my daughters came to visit me the first time I tried to feed myself, I was so proud. I said, I fed myself. And they all looked at each other and said, well done, Mom. And then one of them said, do you want to go and have a shower? I mean, I had food all over. But I got there in the end. I was able to feed myself again. So, you know, sometimes just the fear of, can you imagine never being able to feed yourself? That's what was going through my mind. Can you imagine never being able to walk again? Can you imagine? You know, I was terrified of the thought. And that's what made me get up and do things. So that was my catalyst, fear.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that and opening up on something as sensitive as that. Marvin, what about you? Let's hear it from a male point of view.
I think, you know, crisis is something that as males, we always think about what's tomorrow going to be like. And especially if you have a family, you always want to make sure that there's sufficient, there's enough of everything. I remember at the time that and this is the amazing story. The time where we were retrenched, both Joanna and I, the most weirdest of things would have happened. We got the most exotic of meat as like kind of gift from my wife's uncle, and then my mom and them gave us this gift of meat. That same moment, I won this. It was also when we had our 5th year, not 5th year, I think it's the 7th year anniversary. I won this competition where we could go to this 5-star lodge out in Limpopo. The fuel got sponsored by somebody else. So, again, that one moment had the complete opposite effect. So we got kind of the best of everything with nothing, which is incredible. And I've seen that happen so many times over and over again, not just with us, with my side of the family and my wife's side of the family, and a couple of friends as well. The lesson in this is there's only so much you can do. And sometimes it's important to just live and let go. Once you let go and try to be in control of everything all of the time, and that's what we do as males, then stuff doesn't work out. But when you pray for something and you leave it in God's hands, things just work out even better than you expected. I mean, who would have thought 5-star place with this exotic meats, stuff happening? I mean, it's just great testimonies happen when you let go.
Oh, wonderful.
And those crises, again, it's a perspective. At the time, I didn't know anything about perspective, so I was properly stressing and I was properly asking all the questions. But again, you have the right people on your team. My wife kept me in the right place, the right frame of mind, reminded me who we are. It helps. And if there's something that I can bring back to MAP, it's all about being linked with the right with the right sort of people that are like-minded, that'll keep you accountable and keep you true to firstly what you stand for, and secondly keep you on track, because it's easy to get into a hole and not see any light. But if you have the right people around you, they'll help bring you out of that hole, and you'll see lots of light.
And I think that's an important thing. All right, Ted, we're looking forward to the next one. Thank you.
When I think about this topic of my scar, my story, I think about my depression could become my deliverance. I don't know if you've noticed that. I'm sure that right now you might be thinking, well, depression is something that other people go through. In fact, very few people would admit that they actually go through depression. And they're so good at going through depression that even in their depressed state, they are able to put a smile on and to create some kind of false front, because we are so determined to protect our false image. Women will go and put makeup on to hide the real image behind the makeup. And I think men are just as good at displaying an image of something other than who they really are. And so when I talk about depression, I think of this downward spiral. It's almost, you don't like to be depressed, but actually you kind of enjoy it to some extent. Why? Because, why do I say that? You want to stay there. And you begin to go down, and you begin to focus on the problem, and the more you focus on the situation, the more it becomes your destination. And maybe with depression, for many people, they have to go until they hit rock bottom before they can stand up again. I don't think it's necessary for us to wait till we hit rock bottom. I think we should decide that we are right now at the 10th floor, and we're going to stop here and go back up to the penthouse. We don't have to go right down to the basement or down to parking level number 3 below the basement. No. Depression, my depression, can be my deliverance. So right now, whatever situation or circumstance you face, if you're in a place of depression, I want to use the words of Les Brown. He says, if life knocks you down, make sure you fall on your back, because if you can look up, you can get up. He also says, while you're down there, make sure you pick something up. Because if you don't, guess what? You're going to end up in exactly the same place when the future comes knocking. My depression can be my deliverance.
Wonderful. Heather, you were talking about what you went through, and it's not quite depression, but because of it was something similar. Would you like to just carry on from what Glenn was talking about?
Thanks, Peter. I don't think I was actually depressed or concerned, but probably physically, yes, because there was so much I couldn't do. So, and it made me want to do so much more. But when Glenn was talking about depression, I was thinking more of the economy. Everything's got to go down and then it's got to go up. And sometimes when we are told that there's a recession, and, with a depression, it's a longer recession, we start feeling like, as a person, as an individual, as a family, as a company, we must be going through a recession as well. But we can create our own economy. Because if you understand that, and we all know that after night, day comes, we're not going to have day for the next 5 days without a night. So it's just a cycle. And once we understand that it's a cycle of up, down, up, down, up, down, we better equip ourselves to do that. But as Glenn says, if you don't focus on the downs, Les Brown said, pick something up when you're down there. When you're on the down, start looking at the tops. And how can you do that? By creating an action plan. By looking at what obstacles you're going to face. And preparing yourself better for what's going to happen in the future.
Would you just like to touch on attitude?
Yes, it is all about attitude. You've got to have an open mindset. You've got to have a positive mindset, and you've got to change your attitude. It's not woe is me. It's got to be, how can I help somebody else while I go through this? How can I reach others while I go through this?
Wonderful, wonderful. And I think it's important thinking about others. Manisha, what about you and your self-love? And do you get depressed? Or does your self-love conquer all?
No, I was actually thinking I haven't been depressed for my every day I wake up with massive amounts of energy, and this is me, it's my personality. But there was one moment, I think about 10 years ago, where no matter what I did, and I'm such a big, the power of the mind. And so, your thoughts choose your reality. And no matter what I did, I could not change that depressive thought. And then I thought, wow, this is the first time I can't choose better thoughts like I normally do. It wasn't coming. And my mom got me this book, and it said, get it done when you're depressed. And there was just two things it said a lot of things, but the two things I picked up was, one, you don't have to feel super amazing. Just choose a better feeling. Just choose a better feeling than what you were doing there, so just one step. And then the other thing was, just do one thing. So even if you're not going to get out of bed or whatever, one thing, because at the end of the week, you'll have 7 things that you will have accomplished. So even if you are depressed during this time, after 30 days, you will have accomplished 30 things, which you can pat yourself. So obviously choose like pretty easy things, but that actually got me out of my depressive state. That's the one time that I was just depressed and I couldn't think my way out.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Marvin, what about you?
I'm in the game of sales, work-wise, and if you sometimes don't make your targets, there's lots of room for not feeling too good. And it's always a matter of picking yourself up and looking at the next thing. In my current job, there's only 1 year that I didn't exceed my target, as in do exceptionally well. and that did get me a bit down. It was in 2020, and it was also kind of amidst the time when I grew my patch so big that it justified another colleague to come and take some of that, some of my territory, and just because of the rules of what we do, I had to split my territory to give some of that to her, and that allowed my colleague to win an overseas trip, and that meant that I didn't make my number at all. It was tough because I had to coach her on taking over my clients and my patch, and then that allowed her to get what I was aiming for. I had to stop myself to realize that in every adversity, in every crisis, there's always a lesson that we've got to learn. In all of us are going along our own life's journey, and if you don't learn the lesson, you're going to repeat it. You're going to keep on repeating either the same mistake, or your response to that is the lesson that you have to change. You've got to realize, and I like what Heather was saying, about giving. Sometimes it's in that space where you give that you actually receive, and we know that is biblical. But since then, I mean, I'm now 2 years later in a position where I've actually made my same number in 6 months compared to what I would normally do in a year. So again, it's a perspective, and I think, if you're going to keep looking through the rear view mirror instead of looking, which is that size, instead of looking at ahead of you through your front windscreen, you'll stay in the past, and that is a big temptation. And you got to constantly keep yourself, make sure wherever your focus is, make sure it's focused in the right place. I remember when we did our training as facilitators, Glenn used the analogy of being in this busy restaurant, and there's lots of obstacles in the way, and it's just amazing how the mind works. If you keep your eye focused on where you're headed, focused on the vision, focused on the goal, your mind automatically gets you to move around certain obstacles, and you get to the place that you're heading to. Doesn't matter how long it takes you to get there, because again, every one of us is on our own journey, and some will get to that goal quicker, and others will get there when they need to get there. The important thing is staying focused and getting there. That to me is the important thing.
Wonderful, thank you. We've got an exciting clip coming up now, and I'm looking forward to talking afterwards about excuses. So Glenn, let's have the last one. Thank you.
Here's another interesting concept. My story and my scar could also mean my excuse, my experience. Have you ever made an excuse before? I mean, some people are so good at making excuses, it's the first thing that rolls off their lips. You say something to them and immediately, in fact, I've noticed that I will invite people to an event, for example, and the people who are the fastest to respond are the ones who've got an excuse. I mean, they're so excited. I've got a legitimate excuse. I can't come because my auntie's uncle's nephew's friend who has another cousin is offering free food at their auntie's funeral, and I'm going. And so, people have got excuses. Thank goodness I hurt my foot this morning. I can't come. My car has a flat tire. And there's so many good reasons that people can use to justify why they don't go out and get the experience. You see, your very excuse could have been your experience. And that experience is what empowers you to really move forward and do exciting things. So I want to encourage you this morning is don't fall into the habit of making excuses. Seek opportunities to gain the experience. Experience is life's greatest teacher. Somebody says wise people learn from other people's experience, because gaining the experience yourself can lead to loss and pain on some occasions. But I can assure you, when you've put your hand on a hot stove and burnt yourself, you will never ever forget that lesson. And so let's go out and become the people that gain experience and leave excuses for those who are not winners. My excuse, my experience.
That was wonderful. And I'll just say thank you to panel for being here. I know that a number of people were invited, and there were a whole lot of excuses. And whilst we're talking about excuses, I just want to say something may happen, and it's not an excuse, but I've got load shedding coming up shortly. And if I suddenly disappear, you know it's load shedding, and it's not an excuse. So I'm sort of saying, Glenn, be prepared if I disappear. But I just love that about excuses. And I just think, yes, we can make those excuses. Marvin, I'd like to hear what you've got to say about excuses. And I'm thinking particularly of your experiences of long distance events and the like.
Yeah, excuses is just the easy go-to for not wanting to get onto the road and train. Excuses is the one thing that I find myself having to deal with a lot, because it's easier, especially, you know, if I think of now, it's winter, it's cold, it's warm in your bed, or it's not safe anymore, or we don't have power, so my watch is not charged, so I can't actually clock my kilos. I like the quote that I had read, which says, excuses will always be there, opportunity won't. And
so true.
I've had an opportunity where I had to be prepared to speak to the chairman of a specific company. By doing so and being ready for the opportunity, I managed to close the fastest deal kind of in my career. If I wasn't ready for that opportunity and I had all the excuses in the world, I think I'd still be sitting and wondering, how am I going to do this? Is this ever going to happen? Yeah. You know, I think we all know that quote that says, you know, it's better to be ready for when an opportunity arises than when an opportunity arises to start trying to get ready. And trying to get ready can be one of those excuses. And again, yeah, I think it's important to be careful that you don't surround yourself with those that will negatively influence you and give you excuses, because that's an easy go-to for them, but rather be around people that will help you find a way to make it happen.
Wonderful. Yeah, wonderful. Heather, what do you say about excuses?
I don't make excuses. I blame, I complain, and I justify. That's not an excuse. But actually, it's so easy to come up with excuses. And sometimes we go looking for excuses. We look for something to give us a way out of something else. But what sort of excuses do I make? Well, I mean, Manisha was talking about running and becoming closer to the Spirit. When I try and run, I can't breathe, so I'm concentrating on my breathing. Oh, the Spirit there. I make excuses for things like I've been trying to release weight for ages, but you know, God has blessed me. I can cook so well and I can bake so well, and I'm using my talents. I bake the buns and I eat them. So you can come up with excuses all the time, you know. I've got so many excuses up my sleeve, and I've denied myself the experience. I never wanted to be in photos because it was too big, and now when I'm looking at it, I don't have the memorabilia, you know, the mementos from holidays, because I just didn't want to take the picture. So you can shy away from so many experiences because you're too busy making excuses.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now for the unstoppable lady, what does she say about excuses?
I actually had a fitness group, and the group's name was #NoExcuses. because I
Lovely.
hated all the excuses that people come up with, you know. And so every time they said something, I'm like, hello, what is the group name? And then it was, I attended a Map for Life with you, actually. And I can't remember the book's name, but I remember the part which you say 1, 2, 3 rocket, and you rocket out of bed, so you prevent excuses. But it was such a brilliant analogy and such a brilliant book that it's like stayed with me, and I read the book, and I highly recommend that book to anyone. Maybe someone can put in the comments what the book's name and author is, to prevent excuses.
I'm in the same boat as you. My excuses I can't remember, but I know the book you're talking about. Yeah, it's that. Yeah, just get up and do it. Team, it's been wonderful. I've found tonight. I said at the start it's going to be exciting, but it was a lot more exciting than I expected. And thank you, and thank you for opening yourself up and sharing some very personal moments and things like that with the audience. And I'm sure folk out there have learned something tonight, both by Glenn's presentation and by your comments. So thank you, everybody. And I'm glad that I'm able to say good night to everybody before load shedding kicks in and locks us out. So good night all. See you next week, and thank you.